So for you just starting broadcast or recording, we just started, and all we've done so far is we go to the command line. If you have Git installed, go ahead and go to scm.com/download-win. Actually, share my screen for this.
When you're doing setup, which one do you pick? Use Bash only or run Git Repo?
I would do run Git from the Windows command prompt. And the only reason I say that is I don't. What are the two? Anybody know the two commands? There's some commands like sort. If you're really going to get in and use command line tools, like use your own diff command, which I don't do. I prefer to just be in the Windows command line. But that's because I'm not very proficient in Linux scripting, and B, I'd rather do stuff on the Windows command line. I have Cygwin, which is kind of like a Linux on Windows as well, but I would just use the command prompt. They have something very dangerous in red. It's like, oh, if you don't know what it means, you're not going to screw it.
I hope the letters show the right way. Well, they see correctly. Okay. Yeah, it's like we're showing you would see a B on our screen, but we see the back of your screen. When you raise your right hand, it looks correct.
Got it. Because they're seeing my screen, not what they're using. Okay.
So real quick here, we've got a directory. Right, so in this is whatever directory that you're keeping track of. And this is where they put a .git. Right, so it's not until we actually have other things in here. README, right, markdown. And we're going to get it to GitHub a little bit later, but the .NET file is just a file. And there you can use notations that understand wiki text. But you need one of those to post it to GitHub. And then another directory, tier 1, and then maybe have files. So what Git does is it keeps track of everything, not just single files. It basically takes a snapshot of the whole directory tree. And that's why the old Git website had a domocon on it, the big brown 7-Eleven mug guy that's eating trees, because Git ingests trees and gives you like an MD5 checksum. And that's part of the reason that it's so efficient. Right here, I'm able to share my screen. Right, screen share? Oh, I'm doing a live hangout. Okay. Mic 2. What we're going to do here. It's not going to be the best, but for the people watching this. What we've done so far is we've made a blank directory for an Eclipse workspace to open. And if we've got Eclipse and the force.com IDE and get it installed, which you can look up if you don't, what we want to do is create a blank directory, which I did here. You can see here, we removed the directory that I had already there, and then we made a new directory so that it's blank. And then I just opened up Eclipse after I initiated the Git repo. So we get in it here, and by this point we've opened up Eclipse, and what we're going to do is we're going to go edit. 2 directories to add. Go ahead and add that we've made so far, commit it, then we start from fresh. We're going to go add for the current directory. And then if you do the git status again, you'll see we've got a whole bunch more information because it goes in recursively and tells you everything that we added, modified, deleted. now, let's go ahead and commit that. You also see if we do git branch, still don't have a branch yet, right? So git commit and M, put our commit message in, initial commit. Actually, you know what? I'm going to call this base initialized. All right, and then if I get a status, we're fine. Nothing to commit. And this branches, you'll see it's got a master branch. And the star, I also think it highlights the green, means that that's the head. So that's what you got checked out, right? You can only check out one branch at a time. So now, let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to click into the workbench in Eclipse. Now what I'm going to do for a little bit is basically do some things in Eclipse and then use Git to track what changes, right? So let's click into the workbench. Now that I've done that, if I close Eclipse and come back, I don't think it's going to take me to the home screen, right? So is that storing somewhere? Let's do status. That's changed files. It'll let me know. And it hasn't. I think it's something that it writes when it closes. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to close Eclipse. I'm not going to click yet. I will click OK. And that closes. Come on in. So now that I've the work and closed, I'm going to go status. And you'll see we've got a lot of stuff going on here. These things were deleted, and you'll see if you do this enough, those are deleted when you close Eclipse every time. So there'll be some things open. Looks like there's, you know, it adds and deletes those when it opens and closes Eclipse. So I'm going to go ahead and add, because there's been files deleted, and the habit of this, unless you want to selectively stage, that's what I was going to go over, I forgot. So in Git, if anybody has experience with other version control systems, which doesn't look like anybody's too indoctrinated yet, which is good, what you've got is some files. Let's say you've got SRC, right? Some inside of your EclipseForce.com project. Let's say you're tracking this. You go into SRC and you just want to track inside here, let's say. This should get pretty well. All right. So inside of this, you've got some files, right? You've got classes, and then that's got utils.cls, utils.cls-meta.xml. Is that right? Pretty close? So you've got a whole bunch of stuff in there, maybe another directory, pages with my page, dot page. So before you commit before you add any of this, it's just untracked files, right? Let's say you've initiated a repo, but we haven't done anything yet. All of this will be untracked, like we saw initially when we opened up an Eclipse workspace and we got everything in there. It wasn't tracked yet, so it was actually left. And then when you get status, it'll say, right, untracked. And then once you add it, it gets added to like this staging area. Right, so once you add it, it kind of like puts this in a staging area. You don't need to add every change you make to that staging area. But this is kind of where the selection happens, and it won't commit unless you commit. It's kind of like, you know, you're able to pick and choose what you want to include in that commit, so that it's not going to commit every change just because you changed different files. So let's say, for instance, this was completely unrelated from that. If I changed both of them, I can go back and say, all right, I want to add the changes to that page, and commit that, because I'm going to comment backlog 82, right, or whatever, or make a comment specific to that, and then also go back to here, so that if something happens to that page, I can go back and look at the history and not get it lumped in with that, right? So once you add something, then after that you're going to commit, and at which point that staging area kind of resets, right? So now I've got a new version, and I can do more changes. So since we've deleted things, there's going to be something you add to the command --all to make sure it removes files, because the files aren't there anymore. Or just say remove that file. You're going to get an error like, oh, file not found, right? So this is the way you can remove all the you can add all the changes, including deletions. I'm not sure how you do that. Like, oh, I want to add those 2 deleted files to this commit. I'm not sure how you do that, but I'm sure. I'm going to add all those changes now. Do Git status again. Right, I can see changed. Closed. Clips. Going to workbench. Okay. Now, I don't have Eclipse open. I'm going to open this back up. Okay. All right, and notice how it goes straight to my workbench. I'm in the Java perspective right now, but I'm just going to come here and vote one status. We have one modified thing, and then it looks like it put us into it added one file, right? So let's say, for instance, I wanted to. I'm sorry for the people looking at the Hangout. My face is in the screen. It looks like it changed some core prefs there. So let's add the modified field first, right? So add metadata, plugins, or we're going to click the core runtime settings or clip RSE. Or RSE. RSE core press. There we go. Perfect. Once we get into Eclipse, there are easier ways to see these changes. You can see them in an Eclipse list view, so you don't have to use the command line. But just to kind of get those basics, I wanted to start here. So now that we said, okay, we're going to add that, we can get message on that. Changed RSE core. Right? I'm not sure what that is, but this is just before something that matters to us, just to go through how we commit that single file. So now, if I wanted to look at the history, it would be a different commit. So now let's say I want to add this. Now I've got this, and that was the CVS plugin. I can say, okay, change was the CVS plugin stuff. Okay. I hope everybody's gotten a better idea of just how do I start a Git repo. So what we did is we just, get Git from online, install it. If you don't have Eclipse, the force.com IDE, get those, because that's going to be the easiest way to do this, and there's non-command line tools built into it. I'd recommend getting Kepler, getting the latest version of Eclipse, just because they have updated the force.com IDE, so you don't have to worry about the core.ui, something that was happening when they switched over to Eclipse 4.x. It's Kepler is the newest one. So, and if you go to Eclipse downloads, if there's something newer, if there's something like Larry they make next year, it's always nice to get the latest version of Eclipse because it goes slow enough as it is. Nice to. Okay.
And there's nothing about it.
Yes.
So Google Git downloads. That's all. It's Git-SCM. So we went over that staging area. So Git Git-SCM.com. I think slash downloads. If not, you get the 404 page with the menu bar. And then, right, Eclipse. I'm going to guess Eclipse.org downloads. Let me open that right. And then again, to the force.com IDE, I could write up the update site, which is what you're going to end up entering in Eclipse anyway. But go to developer. I would just Google force.com IDE. But developer.force.com. And then it's under the tools integration. You really want to find it. And so once you get Git installed, don't worry too much about the preferences that when you install Git, if you don't use the command line and you don't know what it's talking about, you're not going to worry about overwriting the commands. And then what we did is when you open up Eclipse, you know how it has a workspace, you need to pick a folder. And so if you pick a folder that doesn't exist, it will create it and throw a whole bunch of stock stuff for a workspace in there. But instead of just doing that automatically, I created a blank directory. So just create a blank directory first, and then we went on the command line and did git init so that we started a Git repo before we ever opened Eclipse in that. Okay. And then that way when you open up the workspace, you can save the changes and you can see what all happened right when you created that.
What is it?
Yeah. Git space INIT. INIT. Yep, git init. And then you can open up Eclipse and then open up that folder as the workspace and then go back to the command line and run git status and it'll show you a bunch of red lines. It'll actually show you two red lines for the directories it created.
Okay.
And then you can go git space add space period. I'm just add the whole directory. And so really, right, those are the Git commands that are going to get you through. Git init, not really, because especially for Salesforce, the chances of you doing a Git init, right, you're going to do it once for each instance, maybe, like once for your production, once for your sandbox. We'll talk about setting up, right, should I keep all my instances in one repo? Should I keep a different repo for each org? So for production and sandbox, some of the things that are in that too. So what commands here we got? So git init, right, creates a repo in a directory. So when you're in a directory, that repo is going to cover everything in the directory and below. So in any subdirectories, I wouldn't recommend nesting repos. So for instance, now that we've made a repo in this workspace, it's not a good idea to really do it at the workspace level. I just kind of did this to show you how you track some files that change. Because what you're going to do is, if you have anything below that workspace, so a project that you keep, and that has a repo, it gets, I don't know if it complains or not, but yes. You want to get into Eclipse?
No. I mean, is that where it doesn't change? In other words,
yes, because
I went to folder. I have a repository somewhere.
Right.
I check stuff out. I do it again.
Right.
I change it, check it.
There's a server.
Yeah. I would never be on my server.
Right. So we'll do that. What we're going to do is we're going to see how we kind of download code from Salesforce and pull that into Eclipse, right? Make a force.com project. and then create a repo off of that. Bless you. But then after that, I'll show you, okay, here's what's really going to happen. We're going to have something on a server. We're going to use GitHub. And so when you have something that you're actually working on with a team, you never do this to get it on your C drive. You do that, you clone what's there. And so we'll talk about the distributed. You clone the repo that's on. So for instance, let's say you're working in an enterprise. It's not going to be hosted from your C drive. You're probably going to either go to your VM or your box, right? Or if you have GitHub also has private repos, so you can have a private organization on GitHub, and they also have on-site GitHub accounts where you can, if you want to, you can buy or maintain your own metal for that. And some people do that. They just have a virtual machine box that is the place where you can remote in, right? So you remote in, and you either do a git init like this, or they make shells for Git, kind of like Tortoise is something where you can right-click and everything's nice, but it'll have a web UI, and I'll show you some links to that later. There's a .NET one. I'm using an open source one called Scm Manager now, and it's just but if you're using that, what you have to do is it'll create a port. So let's say your virtual machine is 10.80.90.100. You'll have to run that, and then you do it to a different port, so like port 5000. But it takes care of a lot of the UI stuff to go in and to create new repos, add users, put people in groups, stuff like that. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But right, this has no kind of concept of a team yet, because really there's nothing that's enabling more than one person to do this. But we're able to track changes, right? So if we're a sole developer and we're doing our own thing, at least we can see what changes we made. So getting it, you're rarely going to do that, but we've done it. It's an important part. That's how it all starts. And then, before we can commit, I think there's a command line option to commit everything. So we got to add something to that staging area. And that staging area just is a little interim place, because we don't always want to commit everything. That's one of the powers of Git, is we have a lot of control to select exactly what you want to do. And then commit, right? This is the biggie. But now you were saying this doesn't commit it to that remote place. So that's something. This is kind of like saving in Git. You have your files, right? And there's been changes since last time you saved. So this is saving to Git local, right? Status. Actually, this is a huge one. I'll make it bigger, right? And to the colors, you'll see. So when I come into work, let's say I made commits yesterday, so I come in and I want to see, did anything change? I can check the setup audit trail back in Salesforce, or I can just download the code and then I can do a git status. I haven't committed anything, right? It's just I opened up Eclipse. My force.com project is being tracked. We'll get into that. So all I do is I just want to refresh all components, right? So it gets everything. Because Eclipse doesn't deal well with deletes, right? If somebody deletes a trigger, deletes something, it's not going to delete out of that. So I'll share. I just write a little bash script that just clears everything out except the package file out of your SRC folder, because I want to make sure, I download it anyway, so I want to make sure everything gets deleted. And then branch. This is a really big part of Git because it's so much easier than other version control software. But at least I've found in Salesforce you can't build anything locally. It has to be saved to a sandbox. It's got to end up in the cloud. I can't compile locally. Apex is a proprietary language, so I'm not going to be able to do it on my C drive if I'm in a subway, right? Meaning underground, not underground. So the the idea of branching doesn't work as nicely, at least with the idea of I want to make a branch, because the whole point of making a branch is to keep it off of your source code that's in that, right? You kind of want to like make a copy of everything and then be able to delete everything and make new stuff or whatever. But it's going to be on a separate branch. Because, I mean, you could do that without saving to Salesforce, but then how are you going to know if it's valid? That's one of the big things. You know, it'll get to a point where if you want to do some of the other things that somebody like, you know, a .NET developer can do because you can compile locally, and you have to commit here before it builds, right? You have to write your own client to monitor that. And that might involve things like, you know, let's say even your full sandbox, you don't want people going in and making code changes. You'd have to have an integration user that nobody really logs in as, and then other people would have to commit to that repo, and then that user would change Salesforce. You'd have to like limit your developers from accessing Salesforce, and if that's going to be worth it, that's great. But these are some of the things. I mean, admin's always going to come in and make a field in production. How does that end up in source control? Selectively adding things, right, with a different commit would be nice. And we'll get into some of that. So these are your biggies. I think that's all we've used so far. Commit, add, if that didn't really pull anything yet. Add, yeah. I'm going to look at the difference of stuff. So, you know, we're not going to get way too much into that, but once I'll do that once we get into Salesforce stuff, because this is kind of just Eclipse workbench stuff right now. All right. I think we're ready to delete everything we just did. Let's close that out first. Okay. You want to delete workspace? Exactly how to Git repo. Just deleted that .git folder. So I just deleted the folder inside right away. That is your repo. If you get rid of that .git directory, you actually stop tracking it at all. Now I want to make that workspace again. Now we're going to actually get some Salesforce stuff done. So make their workspace. But I'm not going to create a repo out of the workspace. This is one of those things that kind of, just personally I found, well, I guess professionally, for the people watching online. All right. So what I tend to do with my directory structure is, let's say this is just your home directory, right? You've got on a Windows computer C user / my screen name, and then this is that directory, right? You got desktop documents. If you just start up Eclipse the first time ever, it'll put a workspace directory under your home directory, right? So you've got workspace. And if you just kind of do what comes natural to Eclipse when you create stuff, you'll have maybe a folder for your force.com project production, right? And that's a folder that has reference packages and whatever. And as we saw here, that workspace, that's going to have a .metadata folder, which contains all of that information about that workbench, what perspective it should start in, what you have in the toolbar, whether or not, and also your editor, all these Eclipse preferences are stored locally in the workspace, so you can customize those different things. Like whether or not you want to insert tabs or force spaces,
which I tend to like to have spaces because that's what happens in the editor, and it just helps keep coding consistent for developers. I usually recommend putting something that's a repo in a separate directory. So I actually have a Git directory, which does not contain the program Git, but which contains my repositories. So what's going to go inside of here are folders, and each folder is going to have a repository in it, right? So let's do that now. I'm in folder here called my home directory, documents. I got a force.com developer group directory where I keep a bunch of stuff for this for. And this Git directory, that's just for this meetup, right? So I'm going to make a directory called repos, where all my repos are going to be. I'm not going to track the repos directory, the entire thing. I'm going to track each folder in that. So now that I got a repos, we got repos, and we got a workspace, I'm going to go back to Eclipse now, and I'm not going to worry about tracking anything more related to Eclipse or the workspace, right? We're just going to track our projects now. I'm going to pull down nothing in Java. Let's go into a force.com perspective. What I was talking about right there. If you're ever curious about how to make that stop showing up, besides this every time, that is right here. Windows, Preferences, force.com, Start Page, display when force.com perspective is opened. I wouldn't know about the Google, like the first time they had that write all your metadata to a Google spreadsheet. I wouldn't have figured that out if it wasn't for the Start Page, but it's just slow. We like to help it out as much as we can. So I'm going to open up a new force.com project. This isn't being tracked anywhere yet. So let's just do this. How's it going, guys? Go ahead and, oh, and also, for the people that are attending in person, we here. I know, please. We've got just bean and cheese. We've got cheese and jalapeno, and cheese and morocco. I've got please stay well hydrated. You guys came with a familiar part. So right now we've got all right, we've got this going on. So when I was looking at doing setting up version control for my enterprise, who doesn't want to do diff this inbound change set component with current, or diff this class with what's in my repo, right? That would be great. And so I started digging into some of that. GitHub does have an API. What is it? CloudForge. I dug into some of CloudForge's APIs, and it looks like they had everything for the project management and task parts of CloudForge, but nothing to activate a commit, right, or view your branches, or nothing that really got into the repo part of it. But we ended up going enterprise anyway, so no API there. Name is. I'm going to name this after the GitHub repo I started for this. This is AutoCAD Force. It's going to be my Salesforce GitHub app someday. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to download. So this is going to have a whole bunch of code that's meant to tie into the GitHub API, but we're not going to work on that today. What we're basically going to do is make a VisualForce page that is a Git tutorial.
So we're going to make a VisualForce page with a couple of tabs, and there's going to be like a getting started section and working with Eclipse. And so we're going to have a couple of tabs and put some stuff on there. Maybe take a screenshot, upload it, and we're going to track that in Git as we go. And I'll end up that online. We have an organization, GitHub, Los Angeles Force.com developer group. I'm working on the Bitly version of that. And then this meeting's code will be on the Git Force meetup repo. So look for that later. And this is the organization I'm going to capture. I'm going to go into here, call that Git Force. Here, we got force.com, Git. Didn't want to open up my Gmail, even though it's not screen sharing to the Hangout, it's just showing my camera. Open, edit with them. Okay. So, he's done this before. Pulled down a project in Eclipse. Show of hands. Laura, have you ever pulled down a project in Eclipse? Not yet. So you've been able to pull down your organizations, like log in, right? Open up Eclipse and like log in, pull down the project. Yeah. So we're going into here. Yes. See. Has anybody not been able to done that yet? Been able to log in? So what? Yeah. This is so. These are the places to go to get that, right? But this is relatively easy. Name doesn't matter at the top. You cannot have duplicate names. We'll get into some of that. So, right, your username, your password. If you're not on a white-listed IP address, and if you don't know what that means, you probably aren't. You'll need a security token, which you can get in Salesforce here. I'll show you. So, everybody should have the new version of setup, which now there's 3 different screens for your user info. There's your profile, like a chatter profile, and then there's something you can get to here, my settings, or here, my settings. There we go. Hey, wait a minute. I'm not in Untitled Force anymore. Hold on one second. Log in. Want to go to. There we go. Okay. So from here, you're going to click My Settings. This is. It used to be more of a setup page, now it's more of a mobile page. Personal, my security token, and then I'll email you security token. And then you're just going to pop in here. I always like to max this out, 600. I think that's 600 like deciseconds. So it's 10 minutes, I think. 600 seconds. And I want to get everything. A lot of people, I could never be happy with, I was never happy just getting I didn't know that existed where you select that the second radio button here. I just didn't think to click that. I don't know, for the first 6 months maybe. And then finally it was like, oh, that's where everything is. I forget what I was trying to find that wasn't in those. But maybe just objects. Objects and fields, right? The settings. That's not in my pages. And how do you back up those fields if somebody deletes a queue, right? A queue is a metadata object that you can pull down here. You can also query it, right? So through Sockle, you can access things like Apex class. I actually have a mobile metadata viewer. It's a very simple app on the App Exchange. And it basically just, with jQuery Mobile, you can go to a tab and it shows your Apex classes, VisualForce pages, because all you need to do is query for them. And Flexi
which I don't know why that's not working, but it's usually the only error you see. Just click OK, and then we're going to select all. This will take about 15 minutes. I'm not kidding. Oh, wow, look at that. Oh, it's not my work account. Nice. Take a long time. Oh, perfect. So that's all done. Perfect. And finish. So now we're going to have that project, but it is in our workspace. So we basically did. It wasn't as bad as I thought. There we go. Bingo. That was pretty fast. It might take longer if you have 300 objects and are using your code base. All right. References is important enough for you to get every installed package that you have. You'll find out what exactly the caveats to this. Sometimes it brings them down, sometimes it doesn't. I haven't gotten to a point where I want to ignore the reference package folder, but sometimes I do, because if it doesn't download them, then it'll wipe them all out, and then I have a whole bunch of garbage in my Git commit. Because it's really not deleting. You know, I want to know if something can make a test fail in an install package. It's not going to affect me a lot, but it's just nice to track. If you're trying to track everything that's going on, if you've got DocuSign installed and they remove something you were pointing at, it's nice to be able to have that right in your audit trail, backup history. So I've done this. I've got code. Perfect. We're not tracking anything yet, right? Let's go back to the command line here. And what is that? Is it my workspace? So what I've got in my workspace, and then this is that project. So there's my Salesforce instance for AutoCAD Force. I could just do this, right? So git init, boom, tracking this project. It'll be fine. I tend to want to set this up in a different directory. And so what you can do is when you make a new project, force.com project, I don't think there's really any way for you to change, right, when we went through that. There's no way to change where it stores if you do it this way. But what happens is if you're already at, right, if you're bringing this down, like let's say you're a new employee, they've got it in Git, what you're going to do is you're going to clone it into this, and then you import a project into there. So we'll go over that in a bit. So we just took a clip, we downloaded a project, and now we want to share this. That's Eclipse's version of version control. We're going to go project. As of Juno, which is 4.1, it comes with Git. You don't need to install Git, Git version or Git Eclipse. It's just comes standard now. I think all the Eclipse code is still on CDS, but I think they might be available on Git now. So let's select Git. We're going to press next. And here we go, create repository. So here's the location of what we have so far, that folder AutoCAD Force. That has all of our Salesforce code in it, as well as like a .project file, which is going to say how many seconds till timeout, right? All those things we checked on the first page. And then where are we going to keep it? .git folder? No, let's modify that. User create? No. There we go. So we uncheck that. We can specify where we want it. So where's the repository going to go? Create. Gosh, that's not a browse sounding button. Create. Parent directory is going to be, no, not that Git.
whole bunch of Git repos in there, and then my workspace right after that. I actually have some stuff because brought it and then copied it over to the repo. I'm having trouble getting it open. So we're going to put this in the My Documents, like this meetings folder, in the repo. The name, and we'll call this we're going to call it Git Repo. We'll pull that down. GitHub is going to be the server. A lot easier to just make a completely blank thing, pull the blank thing down, and then add your files, and then you kind of have, that's how you get in the cycle of, now I've got an origin on that remote server. So we'll call this that for. Path within repository, working directory. Yes, and then check that again. Okay, so we right-clicked our project, we clicked Team Share Project, and then because we don't just want to keep that repo here, this is how I did that, right? If not, you can just say create within the same one, and it's just going to create inside your workspace production or whatever that Salesforce project is. It'll create a .git. Create a .git file. So we're just keeping it somewhere else. And then could not move it. Okay, you know what? We'll just leave it there right now. Short dash. Take a peek at some of this. These things I'm not going to worry about, right? This isn't going to be an Eclipse force.com in step one, but if you have something like, conflict found, we didn't make any changes to these files, right? Okay, now we've got our Salesforce instance. It's being tracked on our local drive, right? So give us a little grounding in the command line. We're here. We've got it completely empty. Move it. It just wasn't able to delete that folder. So watch. It is back here. Get out of workspace. Go into what? Repos. And force. So it is here. And that's what you'll get. I have a folder called OctoCatForce with the Git repo, and then OctoCatForce inside of it. It's fine. I could rework that. I think I can just move Git OctoCatForce. Overwrite .git. Access is denied. I'm probably using it. Just close that. Denied. Fine. Things like that, but here we go. And we open up the workspace. It's going to have that project. The project is going to be in the repos directory, right? It's being tracked. Okay, so we've got this here. And let's make some changes. So, Salesforce org, I'm going to make some changes in. Let's go to setup. Tutorial. Pages. Okay. And I already got a start on this earlier, but I didn't save it because I did want to do creation of the new page and everything. Page. just basically do Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. All right, we're going to make a new VisualForce. What we're doing, anybody that's come in, we're going to make, so we're learning Git with Salesforce, but what are we going to do? We're going to make a VisualForce page that is a Git tutorial. And then we're going to track that in Git. So, always something pertinent. No warehouse app. All right, just Git, Salesforce, recurse. Let's call it Git tutorial. Git tutorial. Available for Salesforce mobile apps. And I'm just going to paste this in. It's just a tab panel. So, save. Okay. I'm going to try to not delete anything, but it's a pain because when you delete something in Salesforce and you refresh everything, it doesn't get rid of that file. Even if you go into the project, you go into here and you go to force.com and remove metadata components. If you deselect all and then reselect all, the file's still going to be there. It's not going to delete the file, which can be good, but not if you want to have that file deleted and commit that change to the repo. So even if you go in here, the thing I do is just delete everything inside of SRC except the package. You can always go in here and change the package, right? But because that package.xml file is still going to have references to those deleted files, sometimes to be sure, I will deselect all and click OK, and like kind of save that so that I can make sure it empties the package.xml out. If you just delete all the contents of the package.xml file, so it's like a blank file, I think you get problems in Eclipse because it says cannot find, this is not a valid thing. So that's why I try not to touch the package.xml. Now that we've made, so long story short, I'm trying not to delete anything in here because it's just a pain. We have other things to dig into. So now, let's see, what's the status on that? Okay, go up one directory. Delete this one. Good, access was not denied. What's a sudo? All right. And so now let's go into this. I'm going to try to fix this real quick. We've got octocat forwards, and inside of that we got octocat forwards. So let's just rename this octocat forwards too. I think that should be it. Oh, because I was in that directory in the command line, or under it. So let's clean this up real quick. Paste. In there. Delete. So right, repos, octocat force, and then boom, we're just there. Okay. That's what I wanted. I haven't committed this yet. Ooh, I added the page and I didn't commit it yet. So let's do that. Let's create page. I forgot to commit my initial part first, right? Let's go ahead and do that. See here on the status. Not yet, because I made it. I mean, even if I had made it in Eclipse, it pretty much saves that when you insert it. Of course, it has to save that to Salesforce.
But we made the page in the Salesforce.
In the Salesforce, exactly. Yeah. So it won't be in Eclipse yet, and it won't be in Git yet, of course, because Eclipse is just going to be on what's on the C drive. So, let's commit now. And then I'm going to pull in new stuff, which will be the one page. So let's do this. We're going to
Now that we've got a repo, we're going to go add everything. Initial commit. Yay. And then now we should have nothing pending. Now we're going to do this one. I know exactly where the new thing is. I'm just going to go to that folder. You can do the whole thing, refresh all components. You just get question marks. Right? They're empty. They're just empty folders. I don't know why that left is. Oh, that's not correct. Yeah, hold on. Here, let's refresh. Oh, you know what? I moved. Do this. I'm just going to delete that project. I didn't delete things on disk. Something got messed up because I had a folder inside of a folder. I wanted. You ever do that? You download something and it's like blah 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 .2, and then inside of that is another Eclipse folder. So we've got that on the hard drive. I'm going to show you how to bring in a Git repo. It helps if it's a force.com repo, right? If it's like you've got a repo and it's got Salesforce code and a project in that. Let me show you how to get in there. The Git repository exploring view should come with 4.1 and beyond for close. Let's go into here, and it has it. Perfect. If it didn't have that, you'd go here, add an existing local repo. If it was on GitHub or somewhere, if it was on your server, you would go here, clone a Git repository, and add the clone to this view. So since we already have this repo, the working directory, you'll see we got the project and everything, right? It's inside of that project file that it will have the name of the project, right, and everything. Okay, so we're going to import the project, right, to our workspace. Right. For project. I'll use my mouse. Import project and existing projects. Next, right? We can see AutoCAD Force. It does this based on the .project file, so it needs to find a .project file. But also, you can only have one. The name has to be unique. So what'll happen is, let's say you ignore the .project file. What's happened is we've kept production as the master branch, so all one repo. Production was the master branch, full copy was review or staging or whatever. But then what happens is, I'm going to get rid of this real quick. And actually, I'm going to use the name of the repo we're in. So let's say we've got right, some directory, and then we're going to keep our repositories here. So repos / AutoCAD Force. Let's say we had our dev.org instance of this and our partner, like we had 3 or 4 different ones. Maybe we're keeping different versions on that. What's going to happen is inside of here there's a dot. Inside of here there's a .git folder. But everything else, what actually is tracking, that is only going to go in this directory. So when we switch branches, the .git folder stays there. That's the repository, right? So I'm in a directory and I'm tracking this and everything below it. There's a .git folder in here, and that's going to take care of everything. But everything that's tracked of all of these files, everything that's tracked, when you switch branches, it effectively wipes it out and gets everything from the other branch. So it's only going to be in one location, meaning Say how this affects an Eclipse workspace can only have one project in production, only one project in. So what's happened is you'll run into problems being able to have one workspace, and you can only check out one branch at a time. So whereas you could, I'm just going to get through this actually. Import projects, finish. I never use working sets. Yay! Do I just need to run this as admin? Watch, but it worked, right? Yeah, good, it worked. There's some error, but it looks like it's fine. Right, so now we got this project in here. Normally, you want a diff production versus sandbox. You can import production, if you download, right, Salesforce.com ID, you download production, you download staging or whatever, and then you select the two projects you can compare, right? Use Eclipse compare. You can't do that if you have your instances in the same repo on different branches. You can only have one loaded. You can do it through Git. You can Git diff against different branches, but you're not going to be able to do that visual Eclipse trick here, right? There is something in the Git repository exploring where if we had multiple branches, right, we only have a master branch right now. But my experience has been for keeping your different repository, different Salesforce instances, I would use different repository. You can always compare through Eclipse, and there's always a way to compare. You can even create a branch temporarily, like with the master head of another repo, create the branch, and then you can diff it with master. So kind of, and call it review branch, but then just do that to diff it. It has not been comfortable to maintain different branches for different instances, because then they're never really going to merge, right? The whole point for branches is to come together. When you refresh your sandbox, that kind of could be the one time it merges, because everything should be the same, right? When you refresh your full copy server, any sandbox off of production, right then they're the same. So maybe you should merge them, but then right away you're going to make that branch again because the sandbox is different than production. So it just hasn't been pleasant. And you'll see, I mean, my presentation is going to de-emphasize branches just because of that. It's always going to be in Salesforce, so you can't hide away code along with all these other problems. Now that we've got this, let's go to our force.com project. We've seen that there's one page. It doesn't have our extra page that we created. And refresh that. Refresh from server should get every page. And we've got, notice those question marks next to Git tutorial and Git tutorial meta. That means it's untracked. Let's go verify that. We can go Git status. I'm also going to show you how to do this in Eclipse now. So let's kind of stop leaning on the command line so much. So if I wanted to do that in here, I have to use this less, so be patient. We're going to do what's that? Yeah. Here we go. Git staging. Boom. There we go. So see this little window down here? I'm gonna have this. No, you know what? That doesn't matter at all, actually. There's just going to be up here, right? Properties. You see a bunch of jargon. Right here, there's a Git staging. Yeah, just click there. This has a Git status run for you already. So here's where you can see we've got these unstaged changes, and it's literally just a point, control click, click and drag, right? Stage changes. Yay. So slow. And then commit message. Created Git tutorial.
change. You have an origin repo. You can do both at the same time. So basically, yeah, commit, but then commit to server, right? Push to server. I'm going to commit. Status, right? Nothing to do. We're clean. Let's say I wanted to see like what was the difference that I just did right now. We'll do that. You can do that from. I mean, you're going to be working in your code most of the time. So let's show you how to do that from the project view. You can do that on the entire project. Let's go right click. Compare with. It's not going to be team, right? Compare with previous revision. See this compare kind of like you see the if you compare, you can just compare things normally in Salesforce. I mean, sorry, Eclipse. Right? We see we had add page and page meta, and we can see the content of that here. Used to be nothing, now it's something. And what's on the left is kind of the source of what we're comparing to. So now we're at the head and we're looking back and there was nothing there. Question? So that's a way to see what changed to the UI. Everything up to the diffs, I'm a lot better with in the command line, but the diffs, I just do it visually. Let's say, and then I think maybe if we want to do git diff and git diff, I can open a page. Yeah, we can go figure out how you can do that with the current one to the last one. But at this point, I mean, if you're looking at diffs, it's just so much more helpful to view it in Eclipse because you can have a side-by-side scroll, and it helps you. There's enough difference between the same file with a lot of changes, or you move a whole bunch of lines. It's literally going to say a whole bunch of lines were deleted, and then a whole bunch of lines plus 10 were added if you move around stuff. So it's not always going to give you an exact, like if you're looking at it side by side, how does, it's not always going to know, oh, those lines move down here, right? But if you scroll side by side, it gives you a lot better.
What do you compare? Comparing the same one version from one previous version?
I usually get, so the big thing that I do is what changed, because as you won't see this today really, but what happens is most of us in here developers, we're going to be committing the changes we make. The problem is if you're in an organization where there's not strict controls over having somebody commit when they make the change, like somebody adding a report, right? If a sales manager has permission to make a dashboard or an email template or a document, all those those metadata things that, reports and dashboards are metadata, but anybody, you can delegate anybody to make them. It's not even just the admin. This could be a manager. Email templates, please. I don't want to make those, right? But so what I'll do is I'll refresh. I'll have committed yesterday, so I come in and I refresh because who knows what's changed. I don't want to bundle those changes when I commit my page, right, or I commit my work for the day. So I like to start off and say, all right, let's do an update commit, right? Pull in everything. Let's see if any reports got deleted or email templates got deleted. And to get that, I would clear out your files so that if you did a git status, it would say, yeah, everything is deleted. But then you refresh it in Eclipse, and then it will leave things deleted that are no longer there.
Do you have
so let's say you had a trigger, and you say refresh. It's not going to pull down that trigger, but it won't delete your file on your hard drive. Let's do that. Delete the page I just did because it's here in Vim.
Right. No, if you delete it, will not delete
will delete it on your hard drive.
Yeah. The structure change can't really tell.
Yeah.
But if someone wants to add a report or modify the metadata, that should come down, right?
Exactly. Modifications, additions, because the modification will be in the same file. It will completely replace the contents of a file, destructively lines, but it won't get rid of the file on your computer. Let's go ahead and do that, yeah. And then it's such a pain. Yeah, I literally, I'll even show you. Pipe, users, kit, deleted, There's a little batch script, yeah, that I put it in the SRC folder, and that way it doesn't delete package XML, which is a pain if you don't have it. Sometimes Eclipse will complain. So I just delete every directory with code, and then pull down everything from Salesforce again. So possibly not, the best practice, but man, it just makes sure that I've got everything that it really is to date. Let's go ahead and delete this page. Let's go into Eclipse now. Close that compare. And right, I only want to refresh F5. That just refreshes this from the file system. Nothing's changed. I deleted it on Salesforce. Didn't pull that down. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. Right click. Force.com. Refresh from server. No, didn't change at all, right? Let's do this now. Let's go into the project, right? Force.com, remove metadata component. So that's a small word. Remove. This take longer than select all. We'll take a break in about 20 minutes and show you where the drinks are. It'll do a flexi page complaint. Right. And let's deselect all. Gosh, that takes 20 minutes. And pages, it's not there, right? So let's select it. I mean, it's not there. It's still not going to remove it. Right? XML. So select everything. Okay, sure. Let's download it. Yeah. It will. But it's a star. Yeah. Yeah. If you check all the boxes, it will be the star. So it won't even have a single name under the Apex pages. I'll show you guys that real quick. So we've got my source. So the package.xml. You'll see under Apex page, yeah, we have the one page it has, which is everything, it'll replace it with the star. But right, the ones with folders and assignment rules, that's got everything, right? So, okay. So long story short, delete the stuff, but delete everything you have locally, and then get everything. It's backed up anyway, right? Oh. That's the thing. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to just re-add that page. Tutorial. We shouldn't have to worry about that. It's going to have a created by or ID. It'll be an ID page, right? We deleted it and we're recreating it. But nothing that matters here. As long as we do the same, we're doing that. No brilliant line. Save. Okay, so now, check my attention. Screen share.
Are you broadcasting?
Yeah, it's a live broadcast. That's yeah. They can't see the screen though. Screen share, chat, capture, cameraman. I don't want to do that. No. Okay. So, I'm going to close this. And so now we got our VisualForce page, and I'll preview that. Status. Our repo. Nothing changed. Okay, right? Because we deleted it, we brought it down, but it didn't delete it. We haven't brought down the recreated one. It's already there, so we'll just leave it there. We created a Git Repo page. And hold on, you know what? I want to go into tutorial. Okay. And now in here, it's time to take a break, because during the break, I'm going to start filling some of this in. So the getting started part, getting started with VisualForce.com, that's where I'm going to put basic commands. Maybe I'll make a command with descriptions, right? So, like, page block table, title, dot, and then the first column is going to be, let's say, subcommand, and then second column description, and we can write a little description of each of these, right? And then add them in. Have we done any other commands besides this yet? We haven't even done a diff, but we did a diff through Eclipse. So maybe we'll add a diff line. And then with Eclipse, I'm planning on just taking some screenshots. We'll upload the images into static resources or documents or whatnot, so that we can put some of those screenshots in here. And we'll do GitHub. This is in a repo, but it's not anywhere that you guys can clone, right, or pull down, because it's not connected anywhere. So instead of go over, I mean, what you can do is, if at work you've got a server, like a virtual machine or something, you can just Git init just like we did here. You can download Eclipse, and I would recommend that if you've got a virtual machine where you're going to have that, I would recommend setting that up so that you can do things like run a scheduled job, right, or store some other stuff about your repos. But so I would get Eclipse on it, but more so I would probably get Ant on it, so that you can start, once you start doing this, you're probably going to want to do some things with builds. Yes, we'll touch on some of that, and kind of after you've seen how we go through Git, and kind of how, like, yeah, if you're not branching and merging in Git, you're kind of, something makes you wonder, like, well, what am I doing, right? Because it's so easy to branch and merge. But I wonder if I have there's not really like something with a sandbox that I can put up here, because it means it's going to be a production account. But what would happen is, if we went over, let's say we want to name our project different things, I'll go over that later. Why it's not a very good idea to keep multiple instances of Salesforce in the same repo in different branches. Right. And then also, let's say you make new code. So let's say in your sandbox, everything's committed, it's up to date, there's no changes. In your sandbox, you want to make a bug fix. Why? What are the benefits of making a branch for that bug fix and then merging it back in? And why is that really not something that wins you a lot in Salesforce flow, developer flow? So we will go over that, because unless you experience some of that pain, it's like, well, I should do it that way because I want to branch. And you can't hide code, right? I can't compile locally. It has to be on the server. You could write something that it doesn't save to Salesforce's server, So, right, it enables you to write code, and maybe when you click Ctrl+S, it just does a validate only. And if it validates, it adds it to the staging area in your Git, your VM. And then once you actually want to commit it, it'll do all that CI stuff. You know, and it's like CI is a couple, we'll go over some bullet points of what CI is and see how we can maybe get those through other ways instead of the traditional CI ways. They're definitely, if you're a big enough organization, there's definitely need to do these full builds. Something that you'd want maybe like a build for is, I don't want to create a sandbox through production. I want to copy it off of some other sandbox, right? So those are the things where Ant comes into play, and maybe having some ways to do that a little easier. If you're going to do that a lot, right? Why manually build everything? You can, set some tools up to, yeah, I want to copy that to that, and you just need to build it out. But it's not. It's very easy for if you're a C#, .NET or Java house, to say, okay, you can build on your local machine, but then when you push it forward, it's got to go through this ringer before it gets to the website. But in Salesforce, I click Ctrl+S in Eclipse, it goes on, So we'll talk about some of that. And then once we get to that point, I'm actually going to kind of replace, I'll show you how to pull something down, pull an empty thing down from GitHub and get your project shared, or get your Salesforce project shared on GitHub, so that then you can say, okay, let's clone that. Now I'm working as kind of like a slave to the master server, right? Even though it's distributed, you're going to have, so in Subversion, what happens is you only pull down, you only pull down the current version. So I don't have any history. If I want to do history, I think I've got to go ask the server the question. In Git, if I clone, if I make all these changes, and then I clone the repository, I can go in a subway and look at the whole history. And what's also nice is I can commit changes, and then when I go back into the office, I can push it to the server. Well, what happens if somebody's made changes? Then you got to merge the changes. So that's where your merging is going to come in, right? The merging is, maybe I don't do branches, but I'm going to have different commits, and you have to resolve those conflicts. So it's much easier to do in Git than it is in other version control systems. But the whole branch merge, in my practice, I've found that it's not what everybody else does it, uses it for. Right. So let's go ahead and take. Yeah. Let's do that again. So we've got kind of a more. Wow. Nice. So let me see a show of hands. Who has used Git before today? Okay, perfect. So we got about 3 newbies. Okay. Nice. They teach you nice. But there are a few really courses to try and get something. Oh, and that's linked on the Git page too. Yes. Okay. Oh wow. Yeah. It is always going to go through that. Some other free courses they have. Anybody who wants something. It's pretty. Cool. All right, I'll leave that up on the break. And so I'm going to propose a challenge for you guys. Ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So I do have some freebies to give out at the end of the day that I'm sure I'll be asking some pretty for. I know, yes, these are the Salesforce one. New one. Salesforce one. It's got the developer and admin in each one. I'm like, shoot, I meant to get an even number. Oh, so it's the developer and admin cheat sheets for Salesforce one. which you need both. And if you haven't worked with Salesforce one on one, you never know where something's hidden in the menu, and that's harder than the XML correct. I've got one Git cheat sheet. When I was a training course, I guess I didn't want that many cheat sheets. So shoot, I like to do that when I was This is all available free online. The only thing that's not available free online is this, which I would like to lend, and that's so. One of my last events, we had a mobile event, and we got some books, and so we lent them out, and I didn't see those 3 books anymore. So my challenge to you is go here right now, LosAngelesForce.com developer group. Let's go ahead and create a new repository. And really, in GitHub, it's so point and click. It's disgustingly easy. You can get a Mac, I'm sure, Mac, Linux, and Windows desktop app, which lets you do some of this, and you can like clone into desktop. Watch, we'll go in here. You can clone in desktop, which if you have it installed, it just opens up that app and it creates it for you. I think command line's a little easier, but go into this. Let's just make a new repository, and this is going to be Force Librarian. Public repo, initialize it with the README. See, this will allow you to get clone the repository because you can't get clone it without a readme.md on GitHub. Oops. Right. And what this will be is this will be a library app. Force.com, Doug. And so I might throw up a quick dev org for this. This is just so that I have this is all developer orgs too. I'm going to spin up a developer org. I've actually got it. I think it's like Doug.la or something. So it's like at LA Doug, LA.force.doug. So I made some developer org, and we're not going to be able to have Salesforce licenses for everything, but there will be chatter. I want to make like an org so that we can run this meetup off of it, and I would like to install an app. It's the library app that we have. So that this is something that when you go away, you can go to a GitHub account, and we have like our group has an account here. It's got projects, and then also eventually, right? We can, it'd be nice to have like a channel where you can see these streams. But so my challenge to you is Doug Force Librarian. When I actually spin up an org for this, which let's say you download all this code, you're going to download it into whatever Salesforce org you want, right? But then eventually you make changes, and then you're going to want me to put it where that code actually matters, which is maybe the library app, right? So when you download a Force.com command line tool, right, and you make some changes because you know Go programming language, it's not going to get added unless you say, hey, I made changes. Please put those changes in the main one, which is a pull request. If you've ever seen pull requests, that's what that is. You, the person who's running it, pull my code in. And then if it's a simple like new file, it will just bring it in, right? But if there's like a conflict, that's the person who will manage that, right? So we're going to have actually a Doug library, and so that's what I'd like to spin up a basic one. If we don't get an app installed by the end of the day, I'll take your picture and get your email, and we'll, and I'll make a chatter user for you on the developer org, so you can take that away. And so let's break, and I guess I'll pause this broadcast.